This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Mozambique's Nyusi takes election lead. Opposition cries foul. South Sudan's Riek Machar arrives in capital Juba for talks. And Tanzania seeks to open new national parks to boost tourism. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Vivier. Here are more stories that you can expect. UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson vows to press on despite defeat over deal delay. And global music bands gather in Tunisia to dance to African arts and culture. We begin in the UK, where British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he will not negotiate a delay to Brexit. This is after lawmakers backed a proposal to withhold approval for his agreement until formal ratification legislation has passed. If a deal is not approved by Parliament by the end of Saturday, Johnson is required by law to ask the European Union for a 3-month delay to Brexit.
I will not negotiate a delay with the EU, and neither does the law compel me to do so. I will tell our friends and colleagues in the EU exactly what I've told everyone in the last 88 days that I've served as Prime Minister, that further delay would be bad for this country, bad for our European Union, and bad for democracy. So next week, the government will introduce the legislation needed for us to leave the EU with our new deal on October the 31st. And I hope that our European Union colleagues and friends will not be attracted, as benches opposite are, or rather I should say the front bench is, by delay. I don't think that they will be attracted by delay. And I hope that then, honourable members, faced with a choice of our new deal for the UK and the European Union, will change their minds, because it was pretty close today. I hope that they will change their minds and support this deal in overwhelming numbers.
Meanwhile, the leader of the House of Commons, Jacob Rees-Mogg, says British lawmakers will debate and vote on Monday on whether to approve Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. The government had planned to ask lawmakers to approve the deal on Saturday, but Parliament instead backed a proposal to withhold support for Johnson's Brexit deal until formal ratification legislation has passed. We move to Mozambique now, where partial results for the country's general election indicate that President Filipe Nyusi and his ruling Frelimo party are headed for a dominant victory. The country's electoral body published the incomplete results, which put Nyusi in the lead with 75% of the 830,000 votes counted so far. Frelimo party, which has ruled Mozambique for 44 years, had been widely expected to win the presidential, parliamentary and provincial polls. Provincial election results are expected to be announced on Monday, with final results of all the polls set to be published within 15 days of the vote. Meanwhile, the Malian army says it has killed at least 50 militants, an operation in which it managed to rescue some of its soldiers who were captured during the deadly attacks last month. Unidentified assailants killed 38 soldiers during the 30th September attacks. The army has been struggling to repel increasingly growing attacks by militant groups, some linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. 36 of the around 60 soldiers who were missing were also freed during the rescue mission. The Democratic Republic of Congo now, where some Congolese citizens have welcomed the decision by the World Health Organization to maintain the classification of the Ebola outbreak in their country as a public health emergency of international concern. Locals have called on health authorities to reinforce the fight against the disease in order to wipe it out. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The World Health Organization's Advisory Committee has decided that the Ebola outbreak in the DRC is still an international health emergency. The committee made the decision at its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, after a previous declaration expired. Health experts noted that the risk of the spread of the disease is still high due to insecurity in some hotspots in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. A Congolese doctor from the eastern town of Beni praised the WHO for its decision.
I support the WHO's decision to maintain the status quo because the risk of Ebola spreading across the region is still high. They now ought to step up their response activities and the mobilization of funds so that they can end the outbreak.
The disease has claimed more than 2,000 lives since last August. Health authorities recorded a significant reduction in the number of new Ebola cases recorded over the past 2 weeks. They registered 15 cases in North Kivu and Ituri province compared to 126 in April this year. But the WHO warned health workers against getting complacent in the fight against Ebola. Congolese citizens in Kinshasa are also calling for the reinforcement of the response to the outbreak.
The health experts must continue battling Ebola in order to eradicate it.
The officials should keep up with the fight against Ebola until the disease is completely eradicated.
The designation of the Ebola outbreak as a public health emergency of international concern is meant to attract a more coordinated international response to end the outbreak. WHO experts will review the designation in 3 months as the DRC's fight against Ebola continues. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
South Sudan's government says it's hopeful that President Salva Kiir's meeting with the opposition leader Riek Machar will resolve outstanding issues in the country's peace process. Designated Vice President Riek Machar is in Juba to meet President Kiir with just 3 weeks the planned formation of a unity government. The two former rival leaders began the meeting on Saturday and are scheduled to continue on Sunday. CGTN's Patrick Ayet reports.
This meeting is expected to come up with a way forward on forming a new government in South Sudan by the November 12th deadline. President Salva Kiir's government says the unity government should be formed as scheduled in the agreement.
The meeting was to see the way forward, discuss all the other outstanding issues that are connected with the implementation of the agreement. And among them is, of course, the security arrangements.
However, opposition leader Riek Machar wants some key parts of the agreement fully implemented before installing a unity government. One contentious issue is the number of states in the country. Riek Machar's group wants 10 administrative units instead of the current 32. The opposition also insists that it wants an overhaul of the security sector before forming a unity government.
We should unify and train and redeploy unified forces. That's why we put it as a condition for SPLMIO to form the government of national unity. You need to solve the issues of security arrangement.
Now heads of security teams are scheduled to brief President Salva Kiir together with opposition leader Riek Machar on Sunday. That briefing will be on progress made in security sector reforms. It is expected to help the two leaders form a unified decision on setting up a new government. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. More news. Here's what's still to come. Tanzania seeks to open new national parks to boost tourism. And global music bands gather in Tunisia to dance to African arts and culture.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. We head to Tanzania, where the government is looking to diversify its tourism sector as a way to bring in more of those very important tourist dollars. It's looking to introduce conference and cruise tourism, as well as open up new national parks. CGTN's Daniel Kijo reports from the Swahili International Tourism Expo in Dar es Salaam.
It's a traditional Maasai dance from a unique tribe with a rich culture. These Maasai dancers run an eco-lodge and are here at the 2019 Swahili Tourism Expo to showcase the Maasai culture and way of life. The expo is aimed at boosting tourism in Tanzania by connecting people who work in tourism with potential customers in and out of the country.
We have helped the Maasai become more well-known. Through the beadwork we make and other crafts you see here, we show people that we can do this as well. Most people haven't seen much of our culture.
The Maasai people are one of the most popular Tanzanian tourist attractions. So are Tanzania's national parks. According to the World Trade Organization, in 2018, Tanzania earned about $2.4 billion from tourism, making it one of the country's leading sources of income.
The government has made a commitment to grow tourism by improving the infrastructure that makes it possible for more visitors to travel here by air and by car.
The national airline now flies to destinations in India and China. The government also opened a new airport terminal with a capacity to handle up to 6 million passengers per year. Tanzania is already one of the leading tourist destinations in the world, and experts say there's much more to come. The government wants operators to offer a wider choice of tourist activities beyond the safari holidays that have become so successful. Many countries in Africa offer wildlife tourism, and the Tanzania Tourism Board says it's working hard to spread the word that is not all Tanzania has to offer.
Tanzania, we need to go an extra mile to see that more tourists come, not only for our wildlife, but to see our beaches, to come and hear about our culture, to come and see for themselves where the first man made his first step. And that's the places in Tanzania.
Using expos like this to promote itself as a country rich in culture, adventure and beauty, in the competitive jungle of tourism, Tanzania is hoping to become the king. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
The prestigious Festival Carthage Music Days JMC 2019 is held this week in Tunis and other regions across the country. Global music bands have gathered to participate in the event, which has revived the art scene in Tunis. A special night will feature music bands from North and Sub-Saharan Africa in a bid to create a new cultural project bridging all parts of the continent.
Sound Escape is the name of this fantastic show by Rassen Fandry. The Tunisian artist says his performance celebrates music and its creativity, diversity and richness.
It's a solo project, but I invite guests in other parts of the show. It's a mix of genres and different styles from North Africa, which I do classify. It's the results of years of work with Tunisian, African and international musicians.
The Carthage Music Days is a platform of alternative music. It is an occasion for young African creators to establish lasting relations with artists from the whole world and internationally renowned professionals.
There is no limit for music genres in Africa. My goal is to mix music from the North and Sub-Saharan Africa, played by different musicians. It's an extraordinary experience.
I present traditional Moroccan music in a new shape. It's an African project with an international spirit.
Several shows are produced by international bands of 40 nationalities. Organizers believe that music can strengthen human ties. GMC has provided financial support to artists to exchange, travel and perform in Africa.
We try to open the music market and music industry to the African music, and also to connect Tunisian one to the African one, because we have a lot of frontiers, but at least with culture and music we try to develop more connections.
The organizing committee has encouraged young Tunisian creators in the official competition. The committee had received 138 projects, including 37 Tunisian and 101 foreign.
The official competition of the JMC 2019 includes 13 shows, 9 Tunisian and 4 foreign. A new competition dedicated to the Tunisian Andalusian music entitled JMC Malouf is also on the agenda of the event, which has revived cultural life in Tunisia. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, staying with entertainment, the Nigerian film Lionheart is in the vying to be nominated for the 2020 Oscars. Directed by Genevieve Nanji, Lionheart has been selected as a submission for International Feature Film category of the 2020 Oscars. CGTN's Deji Batma sat down with the chairperson of the Nigerian Oscar Selection Committee to discuss the fierce challenge Lionheart is facing.
What kind of competition do you think Lionheart will face in the awards proper?
It's going to be very tough. We are going to Nigeria is going to compete with 92 other countries. We have France, Uganda, Holland, China, different countries. So I think it's going to be tough. But it's also the first time we're submitting as a country. And being the second largest producing country for films, I think it's a step forward, but it is highly competitive, very competitive.
The Nigerian Oscar Selection Committee, which you heard, of course, has been in place since 2014. How come you never found any film worthy of selection until now?
The Nigeria Oscar Selection Committee has been in place since 2014, and we've been looking for films that will meet the requirements, that we're eligible. We poached films, and we did not find any at the time. But like you can see that the industry is growing every day, it's evolving. We have new players now on board, and so far, and that's why this year we received 14 entries. At least 6 met the requirements. It's not compulsory you submit every year. You're not pressured to submit because it's like you're wasting your time. It's very competitive, but this year I think we're ready to. We received good entries, and that's why we picked one that we think is qualified to compete on the global stage.
Do you think Nigeria could be closing in now on winning its first Oscars with this film?
I think Nigeria, this is the first submission, and I also think this is a step forward into competing on that stage. So, like I said, fingers crossed, we're hopeful.
Now, for future awards, what would be your advice for our local filmmakers here? What would you tell them?
I think the filmmakers need to go to our website, the Nigerian Oscar Selection Committee. The website is called the nosc.org, and they will see all the requirements. I think it's basically Film 101. If you understand Film 101, you will understand the rules of making good movies. So I think that's it. We should not just think of competing locally. We need to compete on that stage. So I think it's time for filmmakers who have worked internationally to also shoot films for us. And most importantly, I want to encourage the indigenous filmmakers, the Hausas, the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Kanuris, the Ibibios, the Calabars. That it's time for them to start shooting their stories in their dialect. And also we are encouraging documentarians to make documentary, because this is open not just to films, but also to documentary and animation.
Well, your sports news is up next after the short break. Here's what you can expect. New Zealand's All Blacks storm into the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. We begin in Egypt, where Egyptian football giant Zamalek has prohibited its players from posting on social media. Players who post on microblogging sites could face a $20,000 fine or half their salary. The announcement was ironically made on the internet by the club's controversial president, Murtada Mansour. Here's CGTN's Adel El Marouhi with more.
Creating a digital fan base has been a crucial part of football for years. Egyptian fans went crazy this week for Mo Salah's post of his daughter's birthday. But in Egypt, Zamalek's boss Murtada Mansour has a different opinion.
It's forbidden for my players to have a Facebook page. They'll just have to choose between Zamalek or Instagram and these other pages. Anyone who will have an online page or makes a post, I will have to deduct half his payment. It's a decision made by the board.
Ironically, this announcement was only posted online. Mansour's fury over social media follows an outcry from two players who've talked about their delayed payments at Zamalek.
The players know that social media has an effect on the club's president. After they made the post, they got paid. I think Mr. Murtada is leaving the core of the problem and focusing on the reaction. It's an outrageous decision, like many of his decisions. There is no way he can keep that rule.
Zamalek is not the only club in Egypt to intervene in the players' online presence. Teams like Al Ahly do impose similar bans. However, it's usually limited for a few days right before specific matches.
Most Egyptian players are not good at marketing their professional career, and that's not only about social media. They are careless about their sleeping habits and diets. Most players don't realize that this is the only way he'll succeed. Social media abroad is a good source of income for players, but not in Egypt, unfortunately.
It is still not clear if Zamalek's social media ban is general or exclusive to club-related issues. Still, Mr. Mansour's bold move is questioning the magnitude of power clubs have over players and how such management is affecting the sport in Egypt. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
We'll move on to the Rugby World Cup, where defending champions New Zealand are through to the semi-final after beating Ireland 46-14. 2 tries from Aaron Smith and 1 by Beauden Barrett helped the All Blacks lead 22-0 at halftime. The holders scored further tries through Cody Taylor, Matt Todd, George Bridge and Geordie Barrett. Robbie Henshaw's score and a penalty try did nothing to recover what was disastrous display for Ireland. Ireland has now lost all 7 of their World Cup quarterfinals, never making it past the last 8. The All Blacks will now face a much tougher opponent in England in the semi-finals.
For us, we could put plenty of pressure on the Irish. We knew they were, a strong, forward-orientated team who could attack as well. I think we nullified what they could bring early through our discipline and able to score some tries, which gave us the opportunity to get in front.
I don't really have an excuse for it or a reason for it. On the night, you can't afford to give the All Blacks access points like we did. They're good enough to win games without us inviting them in, and it was incredibly disappointing. I think we're a little bit flat, on the back of having